The oncologist's words echoed in my mind like a death sentence as I sat in the waiting room of Children's Hospital of Atlanta, watching my 7-year-old son, Gabriel, sleep fitfully in his wheelchair. "Mrs. Rodriguez, your cancer has spread to your lymph nodes. We need to start aggressive chemotherapy immediately, or you have maybe 6 months to live." But sitting across from me was Dr. Patricia Hinley, Gabriel's neurologist, holding test results that would cost us everything we had and more. My son's rare brain tumor was growing, and without immediate surgery followed by an experimental treatment that cost $750,000, he would die within weeks. I had exactly $780,000 in my medical savings account, enough to save one life but not both. In that moment, staring at my beautiful boy whose eyes hadn't opened in 3 days, I made the choice that would haunt me forever. I would give up my own fight with cancer to give Gabriel one more chance at life. If this story moves you, if you understand the weight of an impossible choice, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. I need to know that somewhere in this world, people care about the sacrifices mothers make in silence. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Share your thoughts, your prayers, your own experiences with impossible choices. I'm praying for each of you tonight, for your families, for whatever mountains you're climbing alone. Thank you for being here with me, for witnessing this pain, for caring enough to listen. Your hearts give me strength when I have none left, and I'm grateful beyond words for your compassion and love. My journey to this impossible choice began 18 months earlier, when I first noticed the lump in my left breast while showering. As a single mother working as a nurse practitioner in Savannah, Georgia, I knew exactly what it could mean, but I pushed the fear aside. Gabriel had been having headaches and dizzy spells, and I was more concerned about getting him to his pediatrician than dealing with my own health. I convinced myself it was nothing, that stress from raising a child alone was manifesting physically, that I was too young at 34 to have anything seriously wrong. Gabriel's father, Antonio, had left us when Gabriel was 18 months old, unable to handle the responsibility of fatherhood. He sent birthday cards sporadically and paid child support when he remembered, but Gabriel and I had learned to depend only on each other. We lived in a small apartment near the hospital where I worked, and every evening after my shift, I would come home to find Gabriel doing homework at our kitchen table, his dark eyes lighting up when he saw me. "Mommy," he would say, running into my arms, "I missed you so much." The headaches got worse over the following months. Gabriel would wake up crying in the middle of the night, clutching his head, begging me to make the pain stop. I gave him children's Tylenol, held him while he cried, and scheduled appointment after appointment with specialists. Meanwhile, the lump in my breast grew larger, and I began experiencing fatigue that left me exhausted after simple tasks. But Gabriel's needs always came first. His health, his happiness, his future, they were my entire world. The diagnosis came on the same devastating week in March. On Monday, an MRI revealed that Gabriel had a rare type of brain tumor called a craniopharyngioma, located in a position that made surgery extremely risky. On Friday, my own biopsy results confirmed invasive ductal carcinoma, breast cancer that had already begun spreading to nearby lymph nodes. 2 lives hanging in the balance, 2 treatment plans that would cost more than I could ever afford, 2 futures that suddenly seemed impossibly fragile. Dr. Henley explained that Gabriel's tumor was growing rapidly and pressing against critical structures in his brain. Without immediate intervention, he would begin losing cognitive function, then motor skills, and finally his life. The surgery alone would cost $300,000. But even if successful, Gabriel would need follow-up radiation and an experimental drug therapy that was only available through a clinical trial in Boston. The total cost would be at least $750,000, and our insurance would cover less than half. My own oncologist, Dr. Samuel Morrison, was equally direct about my prognosis. "Stage 3 breast cancer with lymph node involvement," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "We need to start chemotherapy immediately, followed by surgery, then radiation. The treatment will cost approximately $400,000 over the next year, but with aggressive treatment your 5-year survival rate is 72%. Without treatment you have maybe 6 months." I had been saving money for years, knowing that as a single mother, I needed to be prepared for emergencies. I had $780,000 in a medical savings account, money I had inherited from my grandmother combined with years of careful budgeting and overtime work. It was supposed to be Gabriel's college fund, our security net, our protection against exactly this kind of catastrophe. But it wasn't enough to save both of us. The choice should have been obvious. Save myself so I could continue caring for Gabriel, find another way to pay for his treatment, explore other options. But as I watched my son grow weaker every day, as I saw the confusion in his eyes when he couldn't remember simple words, as I held him during seizures that left him unconscious and terrified, I knew there was no other choice. Gabriel was 7 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him. I was 34, and if I was going to die anyway, at least I could make sure my son had a chance to live. The decision wasn't made in a single moment of clarity. It was made over weeks of sleepless nights, of holding Gabriel as he cried from the pain, of watching him struggle to form sentences that used to come easily. It was made when his teacher, Mrs. Peterson, called to tell me that Gabriel had collapsed during recess and couldn't remember where he was. It was made when I found him in his bedroom, staring at a picture of the two of us at his 6th birthday party, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "Mommy, why can't I remember this day?" I stopped taking my cancer medications. I canceled my chemotherapy appointments. I told Dr. Morrison that I needed to focus on Gabriel's care and would resume my treatment once he was stable. I didn't tell him that I had already decided to give Gabriel every penny I had saved, that I was choosing his life over mine. I couldn't bear to see the disappointment in his eyes, the professional obligation to try to change my mind. Instead, I threw myself into research about Gabriel's condition, spending every free moment learning about craniopharyngiomas, treatment options, survival rates. I contacted the clinical trial in Boston, filled out endless paperwork, and arranged for Gabriel to be evaluated for the experimental treatment. The doctors there were cautiously optimistic. If the surgery was successful, if Gabriel responded well to the experimental drug, if a dozen other factors aligned perfectly, he could have a normal life. Meanwhile, my own body was betraying me. The fatigue became overwhelming and I was losing weight despite trying to eat regularly. I developed a persistent cough that kept me awake at night, and I could feel the tumor in my breast growing larger. I started wearing baggy clothes to hide the changes in my appearance, and I became an expert at concealing my symptoms from Gabriel and my colleagues at the hospital. The hardest part was pretending to be strong for Gabriel. Every morning I would wake up feeling like I had been hit by a truck, but I would smile and make him breakfast, help him with his homework, and drive him to his medical appointments. I would hold his hand during MRI scans and blood draws, whispering words of encouragement while my own body screamed in pain. I would tuck him into bed each night, reading him stories and singing the lullabies he had loved since he was a baby, all while knowing that I was slowly dying. Gabriel's surgery was scheduled for June 15th at Children's Hospital of Atlanta. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Amanda Cross, was one of the best in the country, and she had agreed to perform the procedure despite the risks. The surgery would take 8 hours, and there was a 30% chance that Gabriel would suffer permanent brain damage or die on the operating table. But without the surgery, he would certainly die within weeks. The night before the surgery, I sat beside Gabriel's hospital bed watching him sleep. He looked so small and vulnerable, his dark hair contrasting sharply with the white pillow, his breathing shallow and labored. I had written him a letter to be given to him when he was older, explaining the choice I had made, telling him how much I loved him, how proud I was of his courage and strength. I had also made arrangements for his care after I was gone. My sister Carmen would take custody of him, and the experimental treatment would be fully funded. "Mommy," Gabriel whispered, his eyes fluttering open. "I'm scared." "I know, baby," I said, taking his small hand in mine. "But you're going to be okay. You're the strongest little boy I know, and tomorrow the doctors are going to make you all better." "Will you be here when I wake up?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "I'll be here," I promised, though I knew that even if I survived the next few months, I wouldn't be here for much longer. "I'll always be here with you even when you can't see me." The surgery lasted 9 hours. I spent every minute in the waiting room, pacing the floors, praying to every deity I could think of, begging the universe to spare my son's life. My sister Carmen had flown in from Phoenix and she held me as I cried, though I couldn't tell her the real reason for my tears. She thought I was afraid of losing Gabriel to the surgery. She didn't know that I had already decided to lose myself to save him. Dr. Cross emerged from the operating room with cautious optimism. The surgery was successful, she said. We were able to remove 95% of the tumor, and Gabriel's vital signs are stable. He's young and strong and his brain has remarkable plasticity. With the experimental treatment, his prognosis is very good. I collapsed with relief, sobbing so hard that Carmen had to hold me upright. Gabriel woke up 12 hours later, groggy and disoriented but remarkably intact. His speech was slightly slurred and he had some weakness on his right side, but Dr. Cross assured me that these symptoms would likely improve with time and therapy. "Mommy," he whispered when he saw me, "did I do good?" "You did perfect, baby," I said, kissing his forehead. "You're my hero." The experimental treatment began 2 weeks later. Gabriel would need to stay in Boston for 3 months, receiving daily injections of a drug that cost $5,000 per dose. The clinical trial would cover most of the cost, but there were still expenses for housing, food, and additional medical care. I had arranged for a leave of absence from my job, though I knew I would never be returning to work. We stayed in a small apartment near the hospital and every day I watched Gabriel grow stronger. The experimental drug was working better than anyone had expected. The remaining tumor tissue was shrinking, and Gabriel's cognitive function was improving dramatically. He was remembering things, laughing again, playing with toys I had brought from home. It was like watching my son come back to life. But I was dying. The cancer had spread to my bones, my liver, my lungs. I was in constant pain and I could barely eat without becoming nauseous. I had lost 30 pounds and my skin had taken on a gray pallor that I tried to hide with makeup. I was taking increasingly strong pain medications just to function and I knew I had weeks, maybe days left. Gabriel was too young to understand what was happening to me, but he sensed that something was wrong. "Mommy, why are you so tired all the time?" he would ask. "Why don't you eat dinner with me anymore?" I would make excuses, tell him I was just worried about him, that I would feel better once he was completely well. But the truth was written all over my face, in the way I moved slowly and carefully, in the way I caught my breath after simple tasks. The 3 months in Boston passed in a blur of medical appointments, treatments, and precious moments with Gabriel. He responded beautifully to the experimental therapy, and by the end of August his scans showed no evidence of remaining tumor. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the pediatric oncologist overseeing the trial, was amazed by his progress. "Gabriel is a medical miracle," she told me. "The tumor is completely gone and his brain function has returned to normal. He's going to live a completely normal life." I cried when she told me, overwhelmed with joy and relief and grief all at once. I had done it. I had saved my son's life. But I was dying and Gabriel would soon be an orphan. Carmen had agreed to take custody of him and she would love him and care for him, but she would never be his mother. She would never know all his favorite things, his fears, his dreams, the way he liked his eggs cooked or the song he hummed when he was nervous. We returned to Savannah in September and I threw myself into creating memories with Gabriel. We went to the zoo, to the beach, to every place he had ever wanted to visit. I took thousands of pictures, made videos of him talking about his favorite things, recorded myself reading his favorite bedtime stories. I wanted to leave him with as much of me as possible, to create a library of memories that would help him remember how much I loved him. But my body was failing rapidly. I could barely walk without assistance and the pain was becoming unbearable. I had to tell Gabriel that I was sick, that I would need to go to the hospital soon. I explained it as simply as I could, telling him that sometimes grown-ups get sick too, that the doctors would take care of me like they had taken care of him. "Are you going to die like Grandma did?" he asked, his 8-year-old mind making the connection I had been dreading. "I don't know, baby," I said, holding him close. "But I need you to know that no matter what happens, I love you more than anything in the whole world. You are the best thing that ever happened to me and I will always be proud of you." I entered hospice care in October, just 3 months after Gabriel's successful treatment. Carmen moved to Savannah to care for both of us and Gabriel would visit me every day after school. He would climb into my hospital bed, careful not to hurt me and tell me about his day. His teacher, his friends, the games he played at recess. He was thriving, healthy and happy and full of life, and I knew that my sacrifice had been worth it. The end came quickly. On a Tuesday morning in November, I woke up struggling to breathe. Carmen rushed me to the hospital, where doctors confirmed that my lungs were filled with fluid and my organs were shutting down. I had hours, maybe less. Carmen brought Gabriel to say goodbye, and he climbed into my bed one last time, his small body warm against mine. "I love you, Mommy," he whispered, his tears falling onto my chest. "I love you too, baby," I said, my voice barely audible. "You're going to have such a beautiful life. You're going to do amazing things, and I'm going to be watching you every step of the way." I died that evening, surrounded by Carmen and Gabriel, holding my son's hand as I took my last breath. I was 35 years old, and I had given up my own life to save his. It was the easiest decision I had ever made, and I would make it again without hesitation. Gabriel is 12 now, living with Carmen in Phoenix. He's healthy, brilliant, and full of life. He plays soccer, excels in school, and has friends who love him. The experimental treatment continues to work. His latest scans show no signs of tumor recurrence, and doctors expect him to live a completely normal life. He talks about me sometimes, Carmen tells me, remembering the good times we had together, the way I used to sing to him, the stories I would tell him about his grandmother. But he also struggles with the loss, with the weight of knowing that I died just months after he was cured. He doesn't understand the choice I made, the impossible decision between my life and his. He thinks I abandoned him, that I chose to die instead of fighting to stay with him. Carmen has tried to explain, but how do you tell a child that his mother gave up her own medical treatment to save his life? How do you make him understand that love sometimes requires the ultimate sacrifice? The saddest part of my story isn't that I died. It's that Gabriel will grow up believing that I didn't fight hard enough to stay with him. He'll never know about the choice I made, about the $400,000 in cancer treatment I gave up to fund his experimental therapy. He'll never know that I chose his life over mine every single day, that I would rather die than live in a world without him. I saved my son's life, but I couldn't save him from the trauma of losing me. I gave him a future, but I couldn't be there to see it. I made the choice that any mother would make, but I couldn't shield him from the consequences of that choice. He's alive and healthy and beautiful, but he's also motherless, carrying scars that will never fully heal. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice, if Gabriel would have been better off with a sick mother than no mother at all. But then I remember his laughter, his smile, his bright eyes full of possibilities, and I know that I did what I had to do. I gave him life, even if it meant giving up mine. That's what mothers do. We sacrifice everything for our children, even when that sacrifice costs us everything we have. My story ends with a mother's love triumphing over death, but also with a child left alone to carry the weight of that love. Gabriel will live, but he'll live with the knowledge that his mother chose to die for him. That's the real tragedy, not that I died, but that my death was the price of his life, and he'll never fully understand why I was willing to pay it.